benefits cap comes in as well. You know, I think that last year we were saying, oh well, you know, that's going to be very much focused around London and other large cities, but we do know it's affecting some of our tenants. And I think we know at least 10 tenants that are going to be affected by that, probably more. You know, and that could have sort of quite a significant impact on their benefits, which could in time start to impact on their ability to pay rent. So I think we've got some genuine concerns around that. And that's before we even get to the universal credit, which is a real big change that's coming in October. And as you know, we're very much concerned around that because it's going to be a monthly payment. We know at the moment how much some of our tenants struggle with managing weekly and fortnightly payments. For them to have to manage the money on a monthly budget. You know, I'm really pleased we're looking at a variety of solutions around that financial capacity. You know, and to be able to do that. And universal credit is going to have to be managed online. Yet we know a very small proportion of our tenants actually have access to the internet. You know, Norfolk itself isn't terribly well served for fast broadband, so that's going to present another challenge, and one that we're already looking at how we can perhaps take technology to them to help them. So it won't be a case of just sort of turning up. It might be we'll take the broadband to them. Yeah, but I'm really pleased that our income team in particular really engaged with this. I think some of the publications they've produced, which are available on our website, I mean, for me they're the best resource. They're very succinct, very clearly written. They're helping to explain to our staff and our tenants the whole impact of this. Very accessible. And for me, the fact that as vacancies have come up through this last year, we've held a number, and we know it's going to be more demand in those areas. So we've been able to identify 5 posts. Without any gain in our overhead costs, we've got 5 posts now we can target specifically around helping people with the impact of welfare reform and protect our income stream.
Yeah, that was something very much the board wanted to see.
But it's not the only cut our tenants are going to be facing, is it?
No, it isn't. And we've just got some headlines up on the board there now, and from any walk of life, we're seeing now a whole series of inevitable cuts in public service, whether it be a youth service that we know not only in Norfolk but in other counties has been withdrawn. We're seeing services to the elderly, particularly around supported housing, support services, impacts on health investment, at a time when we know only today in the press around the impact of ageing population and how we will support people in later life. And it was interesting, again, Chairman just mentioned the National Housing Federation conference just a couple of weeks ago, and people were talking there about a real opportunity for housing associations to step into the gap. We've seen in some parts of the country, I heard that housing associations were funding schools, so that we were getting some of the education into our tenant communities, really, really important. But it does come at a time when we could step into those arenas, really important because it's about an holistic approach to creating opportunities for our residents, not just about providing them with a home. We're going to be under increasing pressure with those income streams to be able to support it. So, Sean, you mentioned stuff around welfare reform. We are going to have to put an awful lot more resource to ensure that the impact is minimised on our tenants and that they can pay their rent which is due. We need that to provide services. And I guess my concern is that we could be pulled in 2 directions. One, that the money that we do obtain in terms of a surplus to be able to put back into much needed new affordable housing, but then torn to provide services to our tenants so that it is a sustainable community. And I think it's a real risk that we know the board have been grappling with in terms of almost choosing which projects, which schemes we do invest in that'll have the greatest impact on our tenants. So it's a really interesting time. It's exciting, but there are much more complexities for us to consider rather than just being a bricks and mortar housing association. Yes, okay.
I think it's not really just the cuts, is it? Because we know at the same time that our tenants are having their incomes cut, that there are some increases in costs that they're facing.
It's not just rent, is it?
No, energy costs, 9% increase last year, another 5% increase forecast for this year. Fuel costs going up somewhere between 3 and 5%. So they're quite significant increases. At a time when someone were going to be facing cuts in income or much smaller increases in income than they've seen in previous years. And I think we've got to be mindful of the impact of that in terms of just with rural communities, the cost of travelling, public transport cuts we've seen. So I'm really pleased that we do our out and about tours and we get out and we visit tenants and we give them the opportunity for us to go to them rather than always expecting them to come out. I think we're going to have to do more of that in the future. It worries me that despite all the investment we're doing, in affordable warmth, all the insulation, that when you talk to our tradesmen, they're saying they're increasingly seeing going to houses where heating's not turned on because people are just worried about the costs of that heating and how they can control it. So, I think like the chairman, I'm also interested in affordable warmth from a personal perspective, but also in terms of what really is going to be useful for our tenants, because I don't think it's just about being affordable, there's a sense of control as well. For me, that kind of environment hopefully sets some of our priorities for the next few years.
Okay, I think it's really interesting, and it sets the context for us. And again, just going back to National Housing Federation conference, I think it was David Smith, one of the economists, I think he writes for the Sunday Times, was sort of reflecting that you could view it as just being one more year down the doom and gloom curve in terms of the graph.